Hey, it's Cody. I'm on my 117th day of doing the Odin project. I'm going to give you guys a quick update on where I'm at with my final JavaScript project. Doing my video a little earlier today because Emily and I are getting ready for a conference that we're going to this weekend. So we're going to be setting up a website for her and getting some other things organized for that. Over the past day and a half, I've gotten a decent chunk done with the delete button for the references. So it's going to be the same thing as the delete button for the attributes. It's going to delete the reference in the local state, but also within the database as well, which is very similar to what we saw with the attributes, but we're going to be doing this within the expanded row within the table. So it's going to have only like one or two things that are slightly different. So it's going to be very similar to what you guys saw on Monday. But let's take a look at the screen and check it out. So we're going to primarily focus on the expanded row today. So that's going to be when we click over here, and this box right here is the expanded row. That's the component that we're going to be focusing on. And specifically, we're going to be creating a delete button, which is right here, that works to delete this specific reference that has been selected. So as I mentioned, I've already done this with the attributes and it works. So I could select an attribute like down here, other fruit, click the delete button, confirm it, and then this was something new that I did add, a little message that pops up and then goes away after 5 seconds. But if we look down here, that attribute is no longer there. So we're going to essentially do the same thing for references now. So that's going to be for this subtable. And if we go over here, we essentially have a very similar system for doing this. The first thing we're going to look for is if the delete reference button has been clicked. So we have a state to have that be set to false or true. And if we jump down to the actual warning modal, if that delete reference button is clicked, then the warning modal is going to come up. I covered that warning modal on Monday. So I'm not going to show you guys the code for it today, but it works exactly the same. It's just taking some new arguments that are specific for the reference. So the reference name and then this sensory object type here. So when we click on this delete, we see this warning modal comes up. The reference name sucralose at 0.011% weight per volume in water shows up. It's a reference, and do we want to delete it permanently? We can click cancel, which is this toggle delete reference button click will then exit out of that warning modal if I click cancel. So this toggle is going to work for both clicking the delete button and also this cancel. In addition to that, if we click confirm, so let me go to, well, here, this delete reference is what we're going to run on clicking confirm. So remember, within that warning modal, we have that confirm button and it has an on-click event that's equal to this prop that's passed this function to run on confirm. That's going to be this delete reference. We go up here. Delete reference will first delete reference data from the database using the reference selected state. The reference selected state is going to be the reference ID. Then we're going to get the lexicon from the lexicon state. I did create a delete reference from specific attribute method within the lexicon that takes an attribute and the reference selected and removes that reference from that attribute. Once that's done, we're going to update the lexicon, set the reference selected to false. Since that attribute will be deleted, there will no longer be a reference selected. We're going to set the delete reference button to clicked to be false to get rid of that warning modal, and then we're going to set the delete attempt message reference successfully updated to that message. And if we click confirm here, we'll see that reference successfully updated. I should actually probably change that to deleted. There we go. We save that. Try this out again. If we click this, we're going to see now it says deleted, reference successfully deleted. So that's what we want. And yeah, this update lexicon state is actually coming from the view lexicon. So I'm passing down this callback function to update the lexicon state at that highest level component for kind of this system. That's going to pass it down to the lexicon table. We see that here. The lexicon table is going to pass that to the expanded row. So use it within this function here. Then the last thing I'm going to show you, the method within the sensory lexicon relies on this method within the attribute, sensory attribute object to delete the reference. So we're going to delete reference with a reference ID parameter. We're going to filter the current references within the sensory attribute for only references that don't have a get reference ID method that is equal to the reference ID that we passed through. We're going to return the array without that specific reference in it, and then we're going to change the date modified. We go up to the sensory lexicon and go down to this delete method for the reference. We're going to delete reference from specific attribute. So we're actually going to get the attribute first and pass it as a parameter with the reference ID. Then we'll use the delete reference method with the reference ID on that that specific attribute and set the date modified within the lexicon. And so that'll delete the reference in the local state. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I also did a little bit of styling so that these lexicon table or this references table aligned with the reference selected or this attribute selected over here with the buttons, just to make it a little bit more visually appealing. You also notice that the attribute modified and attribute added are also slightly better laid out so that the dates are perfectly aligned, and then the attribute added and attribute modified are also on the left with some space between the date. That's just to make it easier to see the differences between the two dates. I'm going to keep that for right now, that date being as long as it is, just to give as much information as possible, but I could consider condensing that at some point. But yeah, that's all I have for today, guys. So thank you for tuning in. We will have our weekly update on Friday, so I will see you guys there, and should have some interesting stories next week on our conference that we went to this weekend. So see you on Friday.